What up, though? Welcome to Gangsta's Paradise. It's where I kick cautionary street tales. Click that like button, click that subscribe button, and click that little bell. That way you can get notifications for whenever I drop a documentary. Support Gangsta's Paradise by going to Teespring and purchasing GP merchandise. I appreciate the support. Class A drivers needed with container experience must have clean MVR to run Michigan and Ohio loads. Home every night with top industry pay. If interested, call 313-828-1084 and ask for Paul. Thank you all for joining me on Gangsta's Paradise, and this one is all about the almighty, insane Latin counts. It's the first time I'm making a doc about racketeering gangs, though I've mentioned them in other docs. The first time I came across the Latin counts is when I did something about the southwest side of Detroit. Some of the counts are very supportive towards GP, and I appreciate that. I started getting requests to do a Latin count cover story. In no way, shape, or form am I here to make this crew out to be a criminal organization, though more mainstream media outlets have done so. There are many news articles about the counts. Though it had a faction in southwest Detroit, the flag was born in the Pilsen neighborhood of Chicago in 1955 by young Mexicans. When doing stories, we all try to do the best we can by researching information, and sometimes the media reports can be a little off, and we can be a little off with the story because we weren't there. We offer services if any of you want to do a documentary. I have a film guy on standby, or if you guys would like me to narrate your documentaries, just let me know. If you need someone to film and edit your documentaries, or just need a narrator, let me know. I'll leave an email in the description. Original gang members were all related to each other. The Texans were the first name, and then the Sons of Mexico City, and in 1959 they settled on the name Latin Counts. The Latin Counts is derived from the Polish Counts gang. So I may not be able to fit the entire history in this video, but I will try to get much in as possible. But again, if you guys want us to do a full documentary, really documenting the counts, just send me an email. So I would not consider this an autobiography of the Latin counts, but a documentary short. I was at Nathan's in Coney Island, Brooklyn, and this Puerto Rican guy started talking to me as I was eating my chili cheese fries. He had tattoos in his face, and I immediately let him know I was just visiting so he wouldn't confuse me with what's going on in Brooklyn. He was a Latin king, which the Counts and the Kings have a history of beef. But he started explaining how the media paint gangs as terrorists, but in reality it's a brotherhood. He said it's no different than the Nation of Islam, and I found that to be interesting. I have never been a part of any gangs, cliques, or crews, but I know people who are heavily involved in some type of faction. In fact, I got a story coming soon about a certain Crip set that's coming very soon. I actually watched them jump a member in before. When we speak of gangs, that usually goes along with racketeering. You find that gang members get racketeering charges. They will also break out RICO charges to take down gang leaders. These guys go through scrutiny, much like black gangs and black gang leaders. We will hear many activists speak out about civil rights issues with brown and black people in America. In the 60s, the Counts had rivals like the Latin Kings, Satan Disciples, and Ambrose. When looking at gangs across America, they really get creative with titles and symbols. A faction of the gang became the Bishops to form an alliance called Bishop Count Nation, which lasted to the 90s. The Latin Counts gang operates in the Chicagoland areas of Pilsen, South Deering, McKinley Park, South Chicago, and Cicero, and expanded to Southwest Detroit. Their colors are black and red, and they even have a junior Latin Counts faction. Near the end of the 70s, they were invited to join the Nation of People's Alliance, created from Pontiac Prison. It's guys locked in prison who have power over gangs. The prisons knows this. It's depicted in plenty of movies. This move would attempt to squash the beef between longtime rivals, Latin Kings, and build relationships with other North Side and black gangs. Remember, the alliance was formed in jail, so it had little effect on the streets until the 80s. The Counts expanded into the suburbs, opening a territory on the south side of Detroit, expanding to cities like Toledo, known as the Toledo Mafia Counts. Again, the Counts opened in the suburbs of Cicero and Roosevelt and 18th and Austin down to 58th Avenue in the area known as the Red Zone. This became the biggest gang suburban Latin Count section. The Counts would also migrate into West Chicago, Addison, Berwyn, Chicago Heights, and Romeoville. They became the second largest Hispanic Nation gang in Chicagoland area. Though there have been attempts to have a truce with rival Latin Kings, a full-scale war took place in 1991. This war with the Latin Kings really went on for a long time, back and forth, much like the Bloods and Crips, much like the GDs and the Vice Lords. A lot of black gangs, they have a generational thing when it comes to the gangs, and it seems to be no different between the Latin Kings and the Latin Counts. But again, I'm not here to spark up any type of wars or anything like that. The Latin Counts began as members of the same bloodline, and their family would grow to include members not of the same blood. The strong brotherhood has made the Latin Counts thrive for many years as one of the oldest street gangs in Chicago history, Latin or Mexican. There is a difference between Latin and Mexicans. Latino is a word which is used to refer to people living in the USA who are Spanish-speaking or Spanish descent, while Mexican is a word used to refer to people, culture, and language of Mexico. There are different types of dialect in Mexico, as it is in the United States. For example, folks in New York speak English completely different than folks from LA, New Orleans, or Houston. In Detroit, we greet each other with the phrase, "What up, though?" But in Memphis, they may say, "What's up with you?" or "What it do, man?" And it's the same thing for Mexico. So when someone is referred to as Mexican, that doesn't go for the rest of the Spanish-speaking community. It means you are referring to someone that is strictly from Mexico. Some Mexicans say they don't like talking Spanish to other Mexicans or Spanish-talking people because the dialect is different and it's easy to offend someone. Find out a lot about people's cultures and the way people think from other ethnic groups. Started with family and close friends and a brother and a sense of pride that has been passed down through generations. I stand with the brown culture. We pretty much go through the same things in America. Freeway Rick Ross, one of the biggest cocaine dealers in American history, explains that there is a difference with black gangs and other ethnic groups, whereas blacks may not have a hierarchy and others have structure.
Black gangs really they don't have the leadership stuff like
no,
not like, I mean, I've been in a joint with them. I've never been around Mexican gangs before, white gangs before. They have leaders. They don't really go by those rules, They got a guy that may call the shots on 2 or 3 guys, they follow him. But when you're talking about he's going to dictate to the whole hood, that ain't finna happen. If they did, they would be a lot more powerful than what they've been. I think one of the problems is lack of organization.
the obligation as far as being a part of a Mexican gang. You have to do certain things that you can't even question.
These guys had a lot of power in the prison system, as prisons are always known to have gangs. Isidro Garza led the gang while incarcerated in the Michigan Department of Corrections, where he was already serving a 25 to 50 year sentence for a 1993 gang-related homicide. He was sentenced in federal court to an additional 10 years in prison. 2017, gang leader Victor Vasquez was sentenced to 30 years in prison for violating the RICO Act. Benjamin, the gang's Minister of Information, who disseminated Garza's instructions to lower-ranking gang members, pleaded guilty to racketeering charges in 2018 and faced 10 years in prison. Another faction is the Toledo Mafia counts. If you ever listen to my videos, I talk about law enforcement using names of gangs in their charges. The story goes to the media, and the next thing we know, this faction is the biggest gangsters in the world, and they slap gang leaders with long prison sentences. Look what they did to Big Meech. According to WXYZ of Detroit, a member, allegedly the president of the Toledo Mafia counts, was sentenced to 20 years for shooting another gang member. I really don't like to talk about murders, so I'm not going to focus too much on that. Like I said, it's a few Latin counts. Do support GP. In 2019, Latin shot caller Tony Scarface Viramontes was released from prison after serving 10 years for drugs and racketeering. There's nothing like him telling his own story besides what we read in the news reports. Some of these news reports can be speculative. It's said that Scarface, originally from Chicago, was responsible for planting the flag in the southwest side of Detroit. The east and the west side are predominantly black, while southwest has a huge Latino population. Reports say Scarface had a few beefs going on. Again, I am going to say allegedly because I don't want to spark off any old beefs. I just did Family Cartel 6, and I talk about how cliques get into bitter rival wars. Not everybody, but it sort of goes with the turf. Latin Cobras, Bolo Boys, and the Cash Flow Posse were supposed to be rivals. I like to use words like allegedly or supposed because I am not implementing anybody in anything, but that's what was reported. He had dealings with the Highwaymen Motorcycle Club, which was ultimately his downfall, set up by Downriver chapter boss Philip Jocko McDonald and Doug Doc Burnett, who was wired and recorded a conversation with Scarface, which ultimately led to a conviction. I got somebody I consider a brother that actually knows some of the Latin counts. My guy, he's from the southwest side of the D. He know Bolo, members of the counts, Cash Flow Posse, and we're supposed to put a cover story together about himself, which I am not going to mention his name. We talked about getting one of the counts to come on GP as a guest, but this stuff takes time, and these stories had to be done right. Got to be respectful as possible. And I understand the streets, whether it's a drug conspiracy gang or racketeering gang. Growing up on the east side of the D, the only racketeering gang I was familiar with was the Earl Flynn's and the BKs, which is from the 70s era. In my opinion, this is the closest thing they could have evolved into something like the GDs and the Vice Lords. A faction of the Crips called Lopes, headed by Uncle Reg, came around in the 80s and grew in large numbers by the 90s. I've also been talking to folks from that faction about their cover story. I knew Uncle Reg very well and the rest of the hierarchy very well. It just takes time to do these stories. We got to be careful on how we present this material. One Latin count left me a message stating that they are really working to stop so much destruction among the gangs. It's the same thing with black gangs. And again, growing up on the east side, drug gangs really came into play. I would see black crews like 2020 and the Best Friends and so forth. The Southwest historically got shot callers on that side, all down there, all through E-Course and Lincoln Park. Black gangs generally fizzle out in Detroit. It may be some OGs that still represent, but it doesn't go generational. A lot of guys who are involved in conspiracy gangs or drug gangs might not like to represent their former gang. Some talk about it and some don't. I totally understand. There are a lot of OGs out there that are trying to get the youth to focus on saving their own and focus on that bag. Some of the leaders from other gangs did prison terms and many are out now. Like the east side, the west side is just as street political. History has shown the government basically doesn't like when people have the power to galvanize the youth, especially if they come in numbers. Strength comes in numbers, and the almighty insane Latin counts come in numbers. They were the first Latin gang in Pilsen. I've seen blogs with people talking about their experience when going through Pilsen, and this one guy said these guys had a heavy reputation in Pilsen. Big Meech, Southwest T are also from the Southwest. They was getting it in out there in the Southwest. There's a lot going on out there, a lot of power and money. Drugs are a big thing now, so many Mexican gangs become part of cartels. There are many Hispanic, Latin, Spanish, or Mexican gangs. Some form alliances, but many of them were rivals. Other places like LA, New York, or Chicago may be more intense as it relates to brown and black gangs, but places like Detroit or Memphis, black gangs don't have a problem with Latin gangs. Some other powerful gangs are Mexican Mafia. The Mexican Mafia was formed in 1957. About 15 to 20 Hispanic street gang members from different LA neighborhoods that were incarcerated. The Ghetto Brothers were a gang or a club and music group founded in New York City's South Bronx in the late 1960s. The gang eventually spread much to the northeastern United States. Like the Young Lords, they were involved in Puerto Rican nationalism. Serenos are a group of loosely affiliated gangs that pay tribute to the Mexican Mafia. MS-13 is an international gang that originated in LA in the 1970s and 1980s. And as I go back to the Young Lords, they were based in Chicago, was considered a street gang, but at the same time, they were all about civil and human rights. They were that type of organization. So a lot of these gangs, what they consider gangs, do be involved in human rights and civil rights, and they actually do try to protect their own and take care of their community, because that's really what the gang thing is all about, and that's one of the main reasons why it goes so generational. Then there's others like Vactos Locos and the Almighty Saints. Guys get really creative with their names. Some of these gangs have been around for decades and decades. They were able to keep the bond within the brotherhoods, and some of these gangs have a big population in prison systems, which is one of the many things activists complain about, is the high incarceration rate between blacks and brown. This is Gangsta's Paradise. Subscribe to this channel. Click that like button. Share this episode. Tell a friend. I will be back with more content. I appreciate y'all listening to this. One love, and a mad salute to the almighty insane Latin counts. Appreciate it.